Okay. Oh, anyway. Okay, guys, I'm not a gamer, per se. I'm not addicted to video games, but I love playing Tetris. I love Super Mario Brothers. I do like playing the Lego games, so I'm a slight gamer, but I'm not a full-fledged, devout gamer to video games, because I read the news and there's other important things in the world, but there's, Anita Sarkessian seems to be getting a lot of criticism for the stuff she says, so I'm going to watch a video and comment on what she says, and this video is Damsel in Distress. She spelled Damsel wrong. She spelled Dasmol in Distress. It's Damsel in Distress, D-A-N-S-E-L, not D-A-M-S-E-L. Anyway, let's see what she has to say.
Welcome to our multi-part video series exploring the roles and representations of women in video games. This project will examine the tropes, plot devices, and patterns most commonly associated with women in gaming from a systemic, big-picture perspective. This series will...
Okay, keep in mind what she just said. It's going to be through a big perspective. I hope she doesn't ignore Tomb Raider. Just saying.
Include critical analysis of many beloved games and characters. But remember that it's both possible and even necessary to simultaneously enjoy media while also being critical of its more problematic or pernicious aspects. So, without further ado, let's jump right into the Damsel in Distress. Let's start with the story of a game that no one ever got to play. Back in 1999, game developer Rare was hard at work on a new original title for the Nintendo 64 called Dinosaur Planet. The game was to star a 16-year-old hero named Crystal as one of two playable protagonists. She was tasked with traveling through time, fighting prehistoric monsters with her magical staff, and saving the world. She was strong, she was capable, and she was heroic.
Okay, and the problem is... what?
Pretty cool, right? Well, it would have been, except the game never got released. As development on the project neared completion, legendary game designer Shigeru Miyamoto joked about how he thought it should be the third installment in his Star Fox franchise instead. Over the next 2 years, he and Nintendo did just that. They rewrote and redesigned the game and released it as Star Fox Adventures for the GameCube in 2002. In this revamped version, the would-be protagonist, Crystal, has been transformed into a damsel in distress and spends the vast majority of the game trapped inside a crystal prison, waiting to be rescued by the new hero, Fox McCloud. The in-game action sequences that were originally built for Crystal were converted to feature Fox instead.
Okay, just wanted to pause what she was saying. Look, I get the whole damsel in distress thing is annoying, and I get it, because if you look at older films, and I'm looking at it from a film perspective because I am a guy who enjoys his films. If you look at earlier films, there's tons of damsels in distress, especially Disney films. So I get the damsel in distress is annoying, but men in distress as well. It goes both ways in Anita.
Crystal is given a skimpier, more sexualized outfit.
Wow, she's beautiful. What am I doing?
And yes, that is cheesy saxophone music playing to make sure it's crystal clear that she is now an object of desire, even while in suspended animation.
Okay, now I can agree with her, that is a problem.
Add insult to injury, Fox is now using her magical staff to fight his way through the game to save her. The tale of how Crystal went from protagonist of her own epic adventure to the passive victim in someone else's game illustrates how the damsel in distress trope disempowers female characters and robs them of the chance to be heroes in their own right. The term damsel in distress is a translation of the French demoiselle en détresse. Demoiselle simply means young lady, while détresse means roughly anxiety or despair caused by a sense of abandonment, helplessness, or danger. As a trope, the damsel in distress is a plot device in which a female character is placed in a perilous situation from which she cannot escape on her own and must be rescued by a male character.
Look, movies do that, video games do that from time to time, but she is ignoring, like I said. I hope she has ignored Tomb Raider, like I said. She's ignoring Tomb Raider. Look, there's video games out there that have strong women characters. Tomb Raider. Badass character. But Daniel Rubsion says that one of Anita Sarkessian's favorite characters are ones that have no features. Like pixelated characters. I'm pretty sure she loves the female characters in Minecraft. There's no figure to them. There's no character to them. You need design to a character. You can't just say, oh, I love the characters that have no design. They're very lifelike. Characters are supposed to have design. Anyway, clearly ignoring Tomb Raider, let's continue.
Usually providing the core incentive or motivation for the protagonist's quest. In video games, this is most often accomplished via kidnapping, but it can also take the form of petrification or demon possession, for example. Traditionally, the woman in distress is a family member or love interest of the hero. Princesses, wives, girlfriends, and sisters are all commonly used to fill the role. Of course, the damsel in distress predates the invention of video games by several thousand years. The trope can be traced back to ancient Greek mythology with the tale of Perseus. According to the myth, Andromeda is about to be devoured by...
Okay, I'm into Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology. You're ignoring an important figure of real history. I believe her name was Joan of Arc. You know, a warrior, the strong woman warrior of the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, I think that was her name, and yeah, she did exist, and you're ignoring the fact that she was a strong woman. You're just focusing on propaganda to promote your agenda. That ain't gonna, let's see, gain people's respect for you.
A sea monster after being chained naked to a rock as human sacrifice. Perseus slays the beast, rescues the princess, and then claims her as his wife. In the Middle Ages, the damsel in distress was a common feature in many medieval songs, legends, and fairy tales. The saving of a defenseless woman was often portrayed as the raison d'être, or reason for existence, in romance tales and poems of the era, involving a knight-errant, the wandering knight adventuring to prove his chivalry, prowess, and virtue. At the turn of the 20th century, victimized young women...
Anita, do you know anything about history, of world history of that time, of mythology of that time? Of course, the men were seen as dominant. Of course, the women were seen as weak. That was the mentality of the time, and women accepted that. Women accepted that because they accepted that way of life. If you look at the Bible, the same exact thing. Do I think it's wrong? Of course. But people accepted the way of life back then. That's how things were done. Women were wenches back then. They cooked for men. Of course, that's how things were done back then. Do I agree with how things were done back then? No. But there were women back then who were stronger and didn't take that shit.
Became the cliche of choice for the nascent American film industry, as it provided an easy and sensational plot device for the silver screen. A famous early example is the 1913 Keystone Cops short, Barney Oldfield's Race for a Life, which features the now iconic scene of a woman being tied to the railroad tracks by an evil, mustache-twirling villain. Time, the motif of a giant monkey carrying away a screaming woman began to gain widespread popularity in media of all kinds.
Hold on a sec. If you're going to talk about King Kong, you have to understand that he fell in love with her. She wasn't in damsel in distress. She was a strong character. She was one of the main characters who was the strong leading female woman. Fay Wray? You know, I know my movies. Fay Wray was a strong female leading character.
Notably, Tarzan's love interest, Jane, is captured by a brutish primate in Edgar Rice Burroughs' 1912 pulp adventure, Tarzan and the Apes.
That is true.
In 1930, Walt Disney used this meme in an early Mickey Mouse cartoon called The Gorilla Mystery. The imagery...
Okay, so if Walt Disney did that, that's how things were back then. Like I said, I don't agree with how things were back then, but that's how things were back then.
Was even exploited by the U.S. military in this recruitment poster for World War I. But it was in 1933 that two things happened, which 50 years later would set the stage for the damsel in distress trope to become a foundational element in video games as a medium. First, Paramount Pictures introduced their animated series to cinema audiences. The formula for most shorts would involve Popeye rescuing a kidnapped Hollywood. Second, in March of that year, RKO Pictures releases its groundbreaking hit film, King Kong, in which a giant ape abducts a young woman and is eventually killed while trying to keep possession of her. Fast forward to 1981, when a Japanese company named Nintendo entrusted a young designer named Shigeru Miyamoto.
Look, Anita, I can't go on for like 3.5 hours looking at these 3 videos, but I'm going to link the rest of the video down below. Look, Anita, look, true. Damsel in distress back then, true. That was most common in the films. That was the most plotline used. But yet there were strong women in films back then as well. There was gender equality in these films. You're completely ignoring that. You're completely ignoring that and just saying, oh, there's always damsel in distress in these films and there's no positive. Wrong. There's strong women in these older films, except you're not investing the time in doing the research to find out which films had strong women. And Fay Wray was a strong woman in King Kong. True, Jane was a damsel in distress, but there were other strong women in these films. Marilyn Monroe. Niagara. She played a strong character. Some Like It Hot. She played a strong character. How to Marry a Millionaire played a strong character. Marilyn Monroe is a pure example of someone who played a strong character in these films, who played these strong female characters. You know why? Because she demanded these strong characters. She didn't want to play the damsel in distress. She demanded these strong characters. Anita, do your research before you make a comment about damsel in distress, including in video games. I'm not saying you're wrong about it because you obviously know more about damsel in distress in video games than I do. I'm just saying there's strong women characters in video games just as much as there's strong men characters in video games. And there's as much men in distress characters as there's much damsel in distress characters.